Hey, what's going on, friends and family? My name is Skylent, and today we're going to be taking a look at Myth of Empires. This is just going to be a pre-impressions. The game is very early access, as in, like, not even accessible. There is a beta that's happening, and I guess you can join the play tests, so some people are able to jump into it. But overall, technically early access. Can you buy into it right now? No, but soon. Definitely. So Myth of Empires, what is this game? It is a survival game. It is an MMO. It is a medieval warfare simulator. It's kind of a little bit challenging to explain, for I guess, the nuances, but really, if you've played any sort of game, think like Chivalry, or mainly like Conqueror's Blade, or if you ever played, Tiger Knight, something like that, mixed with a survival MMO, basically, which all of those games are kind of emerging. They're very new, they're very different, so I wouldn't expect you guys to actually have played Conqueror's Blade, but if you have had Blade, a sort of like, I don't know, Mountain Blade-ish kind of game, but specifically like Conqueror's Blade. Now bring that into a survival setting, and then that's pretty much what we got here. There's some things that need to be elucidated overall, but I think that I'm kind of excited for Myth of Empires. I'm going to personally have my parody glasses on, because I have a feeling, and I'm just going to come out and say this as my, my impressions, the game looks goofy, and I think it's going to be janky, and I think it's not going to be super well produced in a lot of ways, just like a lot of survival games, but I have a feeling that just like we enjoyed Ark, just like we enjoyed 7 Days to Die, just like we enjoyed many other titles, I think it could be really fun. The only difference is that what makes Ark and 7 Days to Die and a bunch of the PvE style survival games fun is that you can just play with a couple of people, you can just kind of goof around, and overall those games actually did get polished to a playable degree, at least, kind of debatably with Ark, but but when it comes to PvP survival games, which this Myth of Empires is a PvP game that requires whole militaries, I guess? Oh boy, then things get a little bit dubious. So I'm gonna show it on the channel because I am hyped for it, I am excited about it, but of course I'm still gonna look at it with a critical eye. Anyways, Myth of Empires, multiplayer sandbox. That's what it is. High degree of freedom is what they want. There's going to be weather effects, all sorts of crazy stuff, actual survival elements. Set in China, it's a Chinese game, and there's going to be massive battles where you lead armies. Is that NPC controlled or whatnot? We got to read a little bit more into it. How much players do we need for this game to actually exist? Because I have a feeling it's going to be a very niche title, especially being Chinese, but it actually could be a breakout hit, who knows? And those who actually buy into it, it might actually be a lot of fun. Especially, I will say that at the moment, we don't have too many Chinese-style survival games, but we are starting to get more and more Chinese media overall getting very popular. I'm talking anime, I'm talking movies, I'm talking, of course, video games as well. Even like a recent like Wuxia Battle Royale, Naraka Blade Point. Holy crap, that looks pretty cool. So Myth of Empires, I think, has a chance to actually be pretty popular. But it's at the same time, it might not be, but regardless, I think it's going to be something kind of interesting. So, all right, only the strong survive. Myth of Empires. It takes place in ancient times on the eastern continent. Myth of Empires presents a cruel and brutal era ravaged by the chaos of war. You'll need to fight off hunger and brave the elements if you hope to survive. So if you actually do try to read the Steam page, it's overall just very generic, very general, very bland, kind of, actually. So, but if you actually watch the trailers and dig a little bit deeper, you will know that yes, there is going to be proper weather effects. There is going to be at least 9 different biomes that look appropriately unique. The swamps look swampy, mountains look mountainous, desert, plain, stuff like that. So that's actually very interesting. Now, they are promising a true sandbox experience, which is going to be entirely full base building. Now, I don't know how that is going to really work, because there is NPCs that you recruit, so maybe it's going to be kind of like the Thrall system in Conan Exiles. In fact, this game reminds me a lot of Conan Exiles if it was not fantasy, and it was set in China, and it wasn't PvE folk. Okay, maybe not. It looks a lot like a lot of other survival games. Never mind, but there is going to be NPCs. I'm just wondering how the AI is going to work, because you have custom base building, or is the AI where you recruit them, is it just kind of like a Thrall system whenever it's in the normal areas, and then when you go to, are there instant sieges? I'm very confused overall about how this game actually is going to operate. If it's like Conqueror's Blade, there will be instant style sieges, but we'll see. In the end, though, there is supposed to be a variety of combat. This is something exciting for those who love HEMA or medieval martial arts, just in general. This time it's going to be Asian, so we got Chinese, which is going to be Chinese style siege machines, Chinese weapons, and Chinese armor, stuff like that, or at least inspired armor. I don't think this is technically historic, overall. It still might be debatably fantasy in some elements, but I'm really excited to see the different styles of combat, especially mounted, combat with scimitars. running around. So I think that's pretty cool. Mounted gameplay, mounted combat is going to be very important, which makes a lot of sense, especially with the history of China, with the Mongols and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool, man. Genghis Khan, man. Was brutal, but he got famous, so that's pretty cool. I really want to I'm hoping, I'm just going to randomly say this. I never really dive this deeply in these pre-impressions, but I really hope that ranged combat in this game is done justice, because there's a lot of survival games, and just the way they're balanced and everything, ranged is normally nerfed, or it's incredibly awkward and laggy. I'm imagining it's going to be pretty bad in this game too, but I really want to believe, especially with the history of archery combat on mounts. I want to run around with the bow on a horse. No other MMO lets me do that. That's what I freaking want. So, we're going to be raising and taming mounts. There is going to be combat with freaking giant bears and alligators or crocodiles, whatever. All that good stuff. Apparently, we are going to actually be, recruiting NPCs. So I don't know if we're going to be sieging towns or what we're doing to actually recruit them. If there's going to be some sort of micro questing, some sort of elements of that sorts. Or maybe that's just like a menu you could select. Don't know how that works, but anyways, that's going to be a thing as well. Now, strategy, of course, being inspired, I think, by games like Mountain Blade and a few other Chinese military simulators. It seems that, strategy is going to be an element here. You're not just a warrior on a field. It is not just a survival game where you're just a solo player, or maybe even in a clan. You actually are going to seek out skilled assistance, work with other players to defeat common enemies, and there's supposed to be this element of politics as well that goes just a little bit bigger and deeper, and that's something that we've been noticing actually as a trend with these survival games. Recently, actually, Bitcraft really showcased that, like, that's half of their whole advertisement thing, and same thing with this game is that you're going to be controlling counties and regions, building and expanding powerful empires that test strategic and leadership capabilities. So normally, you just build a base. Does your base get raided easy? Can you raid other people's bases? And that's pretty much to the extent. Maybe, I don't know, you have a sort of collaboration with another clan on a server, but for the most part, you don't really have that. Bringing survival to a true MMO space is kind of what this game is promising. So with that, likely it's going to be really janky. The netcode's probably going to be really bad, especially being a Chinese game. But I just want to believe that maybe the strategy, maybe the NPC, maybe the base building, maybe all of that's really going to hold a candle to everything else. And then again, what survival game actually has really competent melee combat anyways? In the end, I mean, the trailers look like it's genuinely good. I mean, there's big, massive battles. There's, the graphics look fine. Like, everything looks like it's running well enough. Of course, we'll have to see when we get into the game, but overall, it's like, man, if this is just as good, even if it's janky, just as good as like other janky survival games, but then also has the MMO elements, then it's only a net positive in my opinion. That'd be great. So yeah, we do have to rebuild in a thriving world, it says. In addition to all the different combat roles a character can take on, there's also a variety of different professions and activities to develop, including planting, there's going to be foraging, cooking, livestock, farming, hunting, all the sort of survival life simulation stuff that goes into it. So you have life simulation survival stuff, which you start at level 0, and then you kind of really build up from huts and stuff like that. Then you become sort of like you kind of start battling, doing little skirmishes, conquesting a little bit, all the way to empire, kind of leadership and diplomacy, things like that. Of course, that's the dream. Now we're gonna have to get into some sort of criticisms. So this game, it looks really good, and I really do appreciate the customizations, the sieging, everything like that. I'm just worried, like, how NPC filled is this game going to be? How instance is it truly going to be? As well as if it really does want that full conquest vibe. I do think it needs NPCs that have good AI, but like, how is that going to work with a low player base? Because this is going to be a more tame, lower population game if we just go based on games like Lost Oasis that just came out. And a bunch of other, these PvP focused survival games, they just tend to have lower populations. But then again, this is being Chinese. Maybe the Chinese players will come in, but they're probably going to play on Chinese servers in the end. I don't know. I'm just very dubious of, like, the peak of this game is probably so exciting, and it kind of makes me kind of spit at the microphone a little bit, like, oh my god, I love this kind of stuff. That's why I loved, like, Mortal Online back in the day, or I wanted to love Mortal Online. That's why I loved early survival games, because they had these trailers of sieges and, build bases and stuff like that. And a lot of, sandbox MMOs were promoting that, but the chances of you actually doing that is pretty rare. So how are they going to sort of matchmake or orient players to actually want to siege, to have players congregate and work together. And I do think the NPC system is brilliant, as long as the AI actually works. And I don't think it's going to work with custom-made buildings. I don't know what's going to happen with that. So all super weird and confuddling there. But in the end, I mean, if this stuff can work, it'll be great. It just seems really ambitious, and overall, it does seem like the attention on this game is very, sort of almost whimpering. It's very low attention, and that's why I wanted to bring attention to it and spotlight it, because it is exciting. Chinese, you know, historical, I think historical, or at least low fantasy, sort of sieging style survival game. I want to see more of that. I want to see more survival games that bring survival from co-op or just kind of skirmishy, you know, and huts and stuff like that to a proper MMO space. And that is the trend. So this is another game that I wanted to shout out. In the end, though, it's still pretty early in its development, and at the same time, it actually is very straightforward. It's a survival game that focuses on PvP sieges on bases. And everything else is just sort of nuances that we have to actually play the game to really elaborate more on. But it looks pretty exciting to me. I wanted to shout it out. What do you guys think? Are you looking forward to all these new online and MMO like survival games? Definitely. I'm going to do more list videos on it. I'm going to cover more of them. I love these weird games, and I think, dude, it would be fun if we actually made like a guild in this game, or made an empire in this game with the ambition to take over the world, Genghis Khan style. Okay, maybe not exactly like Genghis Khan, maybe a little bit more not genocidal, but maybe, I don't know, it's a video game, we can do whatever we want. So let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Myth of Empires, yay or nay? You know what, I'm gonna lean on a little bit more on the positive side, still a little skeptical because it is ambitious, but at the same time, yeah, it's a survival game. It could be janky, we could just have some goofy fun with it. It'd be kind of cool. So yeah, that's it. Keep the hype alive, like, subscribe. Much love, friends and family, and I'll see you in the next one.